Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all here today. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to host another webinar um, following on from one that you may have attended in February this year around connecting platforms and connecting knowledge online to policy and practice. My colleagues, Rosie and Alice, and our speakers, Bodil and Christopher, are with us here, and we'll introduce them shortly. But just as a quick introduction, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background to the context of this meeting and some plans that we have going forward, and some ideas that we have of how this potential community of practice around adaptation platforms could take shape, but also to get your input on that. So just to start with, we are doing this in the context of Agora. The Agora project is really about effectively engaging communities and citizens in European regions around climate action and trying to accelerate and scale up adaptation processes towards a climate resilient Europe. And one of our major sort of objectives in this project as SEI is to build a sort of community of practice of online knowledge brokers who can share lessons learned, challenges, and any learning that they have to try and amplify this actionable knowledge on adaptation. So we want to sort of strengthen our collective efforts around this. We want to promote collaboration and cooperation. And we also want to try and connect local level experiences from both the national and subnational levels to policymaking, and to create those connections between the different levels of knowledge that is often missing. And so to do this, we really want to try and support the sharing of best practice between platforms for better user engagement. So to kick off this webinar, we thought we would have a little icebreaker session, and Alice is going to introduce this for us. Shall I hand over to you, Alice?
Yes. Thank you so much, Sakina. And just before we do that, I'll just give you a little run through of the agenda for today's webinar. There's a few different parts, so just so you know what's coming. So thanks, Sakina, for the introduction to the webinar. We'll then have a short icebreaker where you get a chance to introduce the platform you're working for. And then we have 4 short presentations. I'll introduce the speakers as we go along. We'll have a chance for Q&A after the 4 presentations. But if you do have questions relating to specific presentations as the speakers present their work, then please do post them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end of the presentations. And after the audience Q&A, we'll have a facilitated discussion using Miro boards. And then we will have some closing remarks. So this is a chance for everyone who's joining today to introduce their platform and the key audiences that their platform is engaging. We're going to be using Miro boards. So Sakina or Rosie, if you could share the link to the Miro board, that would be really useful. And when you click on the link, you should be able to see a window with this diagram. And I'd like to invite you to take a post-it note and write on it or specify the name of your platform, write down a few words about what your platform aims to do, and then place it on the figure, depending on whether your platform engages policy practice actors or civil society or research and academia. And if your platform engages more than one, then you can put it in the top right quadrant, the blue one, more than one type of actor. And you can also place it on these different levels. So whether your platform targets actors at the international level, national level, regional, or subnational. And if you have any questions, please do let me know. I can't yet see anyone on the Miro board. I think you might possibly need to register or sign in. Oh, I can see a few people now. I'll just give it a minute just to make sure that people are able to log in, and then we'll move on to the presentations, and you can keep adding post-it notes. Just want to check if anyone has questions on that. Okay, so shall we move on to the next slide? We will then kick off with Bodil Stahl, who is a climate adaptation expert with extensive experience in agriculture. She's managed, trained, and facilitated within the Swedish agricultural sector and served as country manager for the Agroforestry Uganda, promoting sustainable farming. She's currently working at the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute, where she leads international training programs on climate change adaptation and mitigation, and serves as a climate adaptation expert with a focus on agriculture. So, Bodil, I will pass on the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar here. So I'm here as the acting manager for the National Knowledge Center for Climate Adaptation that we have in Sweden. Since the Knowledge Center was established 2013 and has been developed through the years. And I worked, as you said, at the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute, and the government tasked. So having this National Knowledge Center is a task from the government to SMHI. Of course, we should be a center of knowledge on climate adaptation. That's quite obvious. And we try our best to make knowledge accessible and easy applicable for stakeholders and actors in the Swedish society. But we also have the task to develop, once again, go back. So we also have the task to monitor the adaptation work of national and regional authorities in Sweden. They report to us every year, and we compile a report to the government, giving us all an overview. How is the progress of the climate adaptation work in Sweden? Okay, next. So we offer guidance. The Knowledge Center offer guidance. We collect, develop, and publish knowledge, of course. And we run this adaptation website, which we will focus more on in some few minutes. The klimatanpassning.se, which is our main channel, you can say, for collecting and distributing knowledge. But we also organize seminars, trainings, lectures, for different stakeholders and actors in Sweden. That's another main, you can say, main channel for our distribution of knowledge. And we develop materials which are useful for groups and organizations working with climate adaptation. Could be films, games, newsletters, and so on. Okay. And we also provide expert support to the government on climate adaptation. We have one of my colleagues is supporting the government at different EU meetings or OECD meetings or even COP meetings. So, but also on issues in Sweden, of course. And then we run the Authorities Adaptation Network, which is quite an important group for the work of climate adaptation in Sweden. It's around 50 authorities on regional and national level. They meet several times a year, and they share experience and knowledge. And SMHI is a kind of secretariat, you can say, for this network. And they are also important when we come to the platform here. We have the possibility to distribute funds to activities within this network. We also participate in international development work. Yes. Okay. So the platform here is in Swedish klimatanpassning.i. And as I said, this is a collaboration actually with the national and regional authorities, mainly those in this network that we work closely with them. So they help us to provide input, of course, and they provide input to the monthly newsletter, which is a bit part of this website. And they help us to check the content, and they provide reports and tools from their sector. The authorities, of course, they represent different sectors. So that is one main input, or one main, an important way to secure that what we have on the platform is relevant. But also the staff in the group. We are 15 people in the group, and we have a lot of contacts and a lot of activities with other people, other organizations. So I would say input from the staff to the platform is another important, input. And then a third way to make the platform relevant is that we do statistics and analysis and follow-ups on number of visitors on the platform as a whole, but also on different parts here. Last year, we had 83,000 visitors in total, a bit more than the years before. So hopefully this is actually increasing. What we have is basic information. What is climate adaptation? How is the climate changing? And this is could be targeting, also the general public. I think some people, not only the authorities, but also people in general, they can use this as a source of information. We do have tools and guidances, mainly for, of course, actors. We try to show the laws and regulations in Sweden. What are the laws and regulations relevant for climate adaptation? We have an overview of the climate effects on the different sectors as an overview. Of course, links to other authorities, and we have a special section for case studies. Okay. So some of the tools. I don't know what the word is in English for lathund. It's a kind of structured way how to do an adaptation action plan, which is based on the Climate Adapt structured way of doing a plan. That is the base, which is very much used in Sweden, I would say. Then we have this Create Your Future. I think that an Agora project in Sweden actually used this Create Your Future to make a vision or a picture of the goal. What is the goal? What do we aim for? What will be the result of our work with climate adaptation? And you do this picture, as you can say, on paper and with pens. Very tangible, but quite strong, I would say, this tool. Yes, we have a digital tool called Climate Adaptation Game, which is a game that you do online where you act as the decision makers in a municipality. You make decisions and the time goes by and you end up 2100, where you can see the results of your decisions. This is very well used by students and teachers in schools, I would say. I've also already mentioned the case studies. So some of the tools that we have on the platform developed together with the authorities and the actors. Okay? So, the challenges for the future, there are a lot. Perhaps it doesn't look very much, but we have some challenges for the future with the klimatanpassning.se. And one main thing is perhaps that we need to focus on the gaps compared to other authorities' websites. From the start, the other authorities didn't have a developed website. They didn't have enough information about their sector. So the klimatadaptation.de was a bit of, that's where you find the information back 10 years ago. But as time goes by, the authorities, they are more developed, they are very knowledgeable, they have their own tools. So what is then the role of our website here, and also the role of the Knowledge Center? I'm sure there will be an important role, but it is changing together with the other authorities. So I think that is the main thing that we need to focus on the coming years. Of course, having the portal updated is always a challenge. It has been so far quite time consuming. Another challenge is, of course, to have enough resources to work with this and develop it and so on. So 3 main challenges, perhaps. The last one, something about the future then. We are for the last year preparing for a new CMS, Content Management System, which is called the Site Vision. So all the content will be transferred to a new CMS. And that will bring us new opportunities and features in many ways, but we hope that the work of maintenance and updating will be much easier. That's one thing that we look forward to. And the new CMS, for example, it will allow us to track content more easily. So far, the content has been a bit spread out. We have not had a very good overview. The authorities, when they contribute to content here, it has been a bit not a good overview. But with this new CMS, we hope that we can have a better overview, what is actually on the website. We have been looking at the structure, and we are so keen on waiting to go live with this new CMS. It will be, we hope, we have a lot of expectations on this. That will be the main thing for the next year. We also see that the examples, the case studies, we need to cover a wider range of hazards and risks, and to, in the examples, in the case studies, focus more on results. Now we have a lot of examples of measures implemented, but we would love to also come to the, so what are the results? What are the results? How do they work actually in practice? So I think that will be another main focus for us on klimatanpassning.se. Sorry. Okay, I think that was my quick overview.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Widil. Very, very interesting to see what you've been doing, and also the new changes that are coming up soon. Now we have a presentation by Dr. Chris Phillips, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the SFI Research Center for Energy, Climate and Marine Research and Innovation, working on the MAGICA project to support climate policymaking. And he has expertise in climate science, adaptation, environmental psychology, and citizen science, with prior work on the Translate project and the Climate Ireland platform. So over to you, Chris.
Perfect, thank you very much. You probably skipped the introduction slides because you did a very good job there. Thanks very much. So today I'll be talking about a Climate Ireland platform and its critical role in supporting Ireland's adaptation to climate change. So really I'll be discussing this from the perspective of MARI and MARI's involvement in developing this platform, and the old platform, because now the EPA have taken this platform over and are in the process of developing a new platform based on the insights and the experiences that we gained. So Climate Ireland serves as a central hub for climate information and data across Ireland. And it's not just a website, but it's a tool that helps guide decision-making for various sectors. So we work with transport sector a lot. And what makes Climate Ireland unique is its focus on supporting organisational capacity to address climate change, and it's research-led outputs that inform planning and implementation of climate action policies. So it's designed to not only inform policy, but also to try and empower local authorities and businesses and individuals to take informed climate action. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. The platform was originally developed by MAROI, and MAROI played a critical role in building its foundation and ensuring that it was designed through cutting-edge research and then tailored to Ireland's local authorities and the sectors. So we tried to collaborate with local authorities in different sectors as much as possible to meet their needs in adaptation within the adaptation community. So as part of its development, MAROI, these are a couple of things I'm going to talk about. MAROI worked on creating a semi-quantitative risk assessment methodologies in collaboration with the local authorities. And we also contributed to a raising awareness training program. So this was to try and increase the capacity of local authorities to deal with climate change challenges. And yeah, I already said, so although it originated with MAROI, it's now moved to EPA, and they're taking over this raising awareness course, and they're taking over the platform. So next slide, please. So this is pretty much what the platform looks like. It provides data, so you have your data explorer, you have all the information on climate change, climate adaptation, and the impacts on Ireland, as well as different resources. And you can access all the climate data and research that we've uploaded to this. So next slide, please. And this is kind of what you get then as a data viewer. You can put in your time periods, your different variables, and you can download the data from here then as well. Next slide, please. So we also developed then the Raising Awareness course. So this was specifically created to target local authority staff and was developed by the Climate Ireland team and delivered online, targeting local authority staff at all different levels. Funny enough, we also got people in libraries and fire departments, which we weren't actually expecting, but apparently it had a wider reach than we thought. So this course consisted of 3 modules, which was delivered through a mix of video, animation, audio, to enhance learning and retention of knowledge. And the course aimed to build capacity within local authorities. 15,000 people, over 15,000 people completed the course. And we had that data set, so we learned quite a lot about how to deliver climate courses. The goal pretty much was to help them identify their challenges to climate change and then give them practical knowledge and actions that they could use in their day-to-day roles. The key element of the training was that we collaborated with the Climate Action regional offices and also Local Authority Services National Training Group to develop this training. So there's a lot of collaboration on what MAROI do, and a lot of trying to work with the users to best find out what their needs are and provide those needs. So through the training, then we aim to enhance the learning experience as much as possible using multimedia approaches and trying to have an interactive nature to it. So what we found out was that participants really like that interactive side, and they like the flexibility of things being delivered online as opposed to in person. So we got a lot of praise for that side of things. There's a big focus on the practical application of knowledge. So we use a lot of specific examples of climate action and specific examples of what people were doing in local authorities around the country, and trying to tailor that knowledge to our audience as much as possible. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of, it's hard actually to get the course because it's actually gone. It's been archived and they're developing a new one. So this is all you can see at the moment, but this is the Caro page that you would land on where the training is. And next slide, please. Yeah. So through that, then we developed, got insights from that training, and we developed research to create new training programs. So the research aimed to look at the effectiveness of that training and the real world relevance and application that the local authorities got from the training. So while the training had a clear goal to raise awareness around climate change, it was essential that we assessed its effectiveness and how it truly empowered decision makers to tackle climate change. And through looking at the experience of 15,000 participants, we could see how that training impacted their knowledge or awareness and their confidence to implement these decisions and their decision-making process. So we started analysing the satisfaction of all of those participants with the course. So it's a lot of work in looking through 15,000 experiences, but we found that 83% of them reported high satisfaction and said that they had greater confidence moving forward to climate action. So that was a positive outcome. From these study results then, and from this research results, we were able to implement this back into designing our training. So now we're designing climate literacy courses, and we're designing climate adaptation courses based on what we learned from this. So that's where we're taking it with future training initiatives. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a bit about the semi-quantitative risk assessment. So as you can see, some examples there of how we took data and research on helping local authorities identify, just say, for example, roads that are at high vulnerability. And we use the IPCC risk assessment for this. So it's based on research and it's based on collaboration with the local authorities themselves. So now they can carry out this risk assessment as well. So we kind of gave them training on how to implement this risk assessment. We also worked with organizations such as the Carrows, Geological Survey Ireland, and the Office of Public Works as well to test this. And once we then tested the first methodology, we had like an iterative approach where we were able to test it with the local authorities, see where it worked or where it didn't work, and then come up with a second or third version of the methodology until we got it right before actually implementing it properly. We also ran pilot workshops then with the local authorities in Donegal, Sligo, Mayo, Galway. So quite a lot of county councils, and they were able to give feedback then on how the methodology was useful or not useful in the real world context, so that we could improve on it. So based on that feedback then, we refined our approach to create the final version of this, and then also additional guidance materials to help people implement the risk assessments in their own local authorities. Next slide, please. And the final thing I want to talk about. So a lot of our work is based on research first, and then also collaboration. But then we try to bring it back into policy and try to make it relevant for sectors and how different sectors and local authorities are carrying out their risk assessments. So one major component of Climate Ireland was carrying out this financial and commercial sector risk analysis. So this was to feed into the national climate change risk assessment methodology. So this is like a countrywide risk assessment that's been carried out. So this research is feeding into that. So to do this, we collaborated with 11 organizations from the financial and commercial sector. We did contact 24, but only 11 got back to us. So they were very happy to provide experts to talk to us, experts in various ESG roles. And with that, we had 20 participants who took part in this risk assessment process, and we were able to come up with final insights to hand over to KPMG, who are doing the national risk assessment so that they could integrate that into the policies. And next, please. So just for the concluding remarks, so to bring it all together, so this platform, Climate Ireland, it's a user-centric and collaborative platform, and aiming to increase people's capacity and local authorities' capacity. It aims to deliver relevant info or information that's research-based, that's actionable, that they can use in their day-to-day practices, and we also give them guidance based on the feedback that they provide us. It helps them with their supporting their decision making, giving them practical case studies which are based on their own areas. And then through measuring our success, you can see 83% is quite a high number of people to be quite to be satisfied with the training that we provided. So, and then taking those lessons and integrating into future development of training programs. Also, all of this influences policy. So it comes from policy, and then we feed it back into policy as well. And that's it, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great overview, but also quite a lot of detail and food for thought as we move on to our discussion. And it'll be really interesting to see how that echoes with some of the work other platforms are doing. So yeah, keep those thoughts for the discussion. And I'd just like to say that apologies, we had an issue with the Miro board earlier, but Rosie provided an updated link in the chat. So if you haven't done so, please feel free to use a post-it note to introduce your platform and place it on the map. It looks like a lot of most platforms engage more than one type of actor, which is interesting. All right, so I will now move on to Rosie's presentation. Rosie is a research fellow at... Oops. Sorry, did I hear someone? Okay. So Rosie is a research fellow at SEI Oxford, and her work focuses on climate change adaptation. She works on a range of projects on knowledge sharing, knowledge exchange, co-design, and participatory methods, as well as adaptation solutions, including the Agora project, which Sakina briefly introduced earlier. Within Agora, Rosie focuses on co-designing and co-creating the Agora Community Hub, which she'll speak to us more about. The Agora Community Hub is an online platform that is a meeting point to empower local communities to share needs, knowledge, and experiences on climate adaptation issues and solutions. Rosie, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the introduction, Elise. Yeah, so hi, everybody. As Elise mentioned, I wanted to give a bit of an overview today on the Agora Community Hub and the aims behind that, how it was kind of created and designed, and how we're looking to move this forwards. So as Elise just mentioned, the Agora Community Hub it's meant to be a meeting point that focuses on empowering local communities and citizens to share their needs and knowledges and their experiences relating to climate adaptation issues. The online platform aims to be this resource hub of information and a place for networking, as well as a place to share and exchange knowledge. This platform was designed and co-designed last year in 2023, initially through a variety of kind of different workshops and conferences, including at ECHA 2023 and Adaptation Futures 2023. As well as we've also collected information from stakeholders and citizens through other avenues of the Agora project, such as through the 4 pilot case studies that were being conducted in Italy, Spain, Germany, and Sweden, as well as some background desk research to kind of gather as much information as possible for users on what would make this platform as interesting and as user-friendly for people as it could be, to encourage people to use this more. So I'll run through a couple of the outcomes from this kind of co-design process and how we've then fed that into the Agora Community Hub platform. Elise, could I have the next slide, please? So the Agora Explorer is one of the key features of the Agora Community Hub. It's an interactive map that showcases different climate change adaptation activities that are taking place in Europe. These activities are showcased, as you can see on the map, as the orange icon, and they can be clicked and they pop up with some information about the project or case study that's taking place in that location. This online map also allows users to zoom in and out of specific locations that might be of interest, filter by topic or theme or content type, and search for keywords that might appear in some of the projects just to help locate this information, because one of the key things that came out of these co-design workshops was making sure that the climate adaptation activities are easily discoverable. Next slide, please. As well as having the activities easily discoverable, on the Agora Explorer map, one of the things that people also wanted to see was organizations and people's profiles. So on the map, you can see organizations and usually where their headquarters are, which is, I believe, a blue icon on the map, and people, which is a pink icon. Organization profiles are often created to show where an organization is based or maybe where they're working. But these organization profiles can also be linked to projects and case studies that are available online, so users can easily navigate between these and see who is working on which projects. This is the same principle for the individual people. However, obviously adding that information is an optional feature when you sign up to have your profile appear on the map. You don't have to appear on it if you don't want to. It's entirely optional. Next slide, please. And then a couple of the other things that came out of these co-design workshops were it was very important for a lot of people to be able to connect with communities and citizens, because I think that's sometimes a little bit challenging. So there are these discussion forums that are available to encourage the connections with communities, citizens, and projects that might be in the same location or might be in different locations. And so this space allows users and encourages users to ask questions or discuss different challenges, as well as share and bookmark resources. And you can either follow or engage with peers or projects that are of interest. Next slide, please. So then another aspect of this that came out is a lot of, I mean, people said there are a lot of online platforms that are available focusing on climate or climate adaptation. And I think one of the key things from the Agora project was that we don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel. We would like to encourage collaboration between a lot of these online platforms. So as this was something that was of a lot of interest to people, we have created this online platforms page where we are highlighting and sharing information on the platforms that we have discovered or have been engaging with across Europe. And so you'll be able to see on the image on the left-hand side, we list all of the platforms that we have available, and then you can click into these and there is more information available on each of the platforms, and then it links to the platform's websites. Next slide, please. One of the other aspects that people highlighted was important to them to appear on this Agora Community Hub to encourage people to use it, was access to synthesized knowledge. So this often came up that information can be shared, but it's not necessarily clear who it's for, or people said that they weren't quite sure how to maybe digest or understand some of the information. So having access to the synthesized knowledge would be really helpful for communities or citizens who are interested in the topic. So to support on this, we had set up a set structure for projects and case studies. So when people are uploading this information online, we encourage specific topics to be looked at or specific questions to be answered, so that the information is, readily available for people who are interested in it. We also have tried to encourage this use of tagging and these clickable tags throughout all of our projects and case studies, so that if you are searching for a particular topic or by location, like say, for example, I believe that case study is in Croatia, if you were interested in all of the work going on in Croatia, you could click the tag which said Croatia, and all of the other work that goes on in that location would pop up if it had that tag. So it just enhances the discoverability and links between all of the information that is available online. Next slide, please. Yes, so we then want to just highlight that obviously a lot of people on this call are working with lots of different online knowledge platforms or adaptation platforms. And while ours is very community or citizen focused, this is very beneficial because we would like to help bridge the gap between communities and citizens and maybe the projects working in each location. So we would like to encourage everybody to get involved and sign up to the Agora Community Hub. You just have to add your profile, maybe add your organization or link to the organization if it's already there. And then you can start sharing your projects or your case studies available on the Agora Community Hub and on the Agora Explorer map. So people will be able to see these in more detail. Next slide, please. Yes, and so if you are working on a climate adaptation platform or do have links with a climate adaptation platform and you don't see it available on the Agora Community Hub page, please feel free to let us know. This, is something we want to expand on and continue to build on, and we are more than happy to add in and connect with other online platforms for this, just to enhance engagement between these platforms online and discoverability between them. That's a very important aspect to us. Obviously, everyone works on different things, looks at different topics, or maybe in different regions. So it'd be great to connect as many people to all of these different platforms as possible. Next slide, please. Perfect. Yeah, I think that was it from my side then. There are a couple of the links and social media available if anybody is interested, but otherwise, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Rosie. We will move on now to the last presentation from Sekena. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind you that you can post questions in the chat, and we'll have time after Sekena's presentation to answer a few questions. Okay. Yes, I need to introduce you. Sorry about that. So Sekena is a senior researcher on adaptation issues, leading several work streams in large European and international projects, working at SEI based in Oxford. She also serves as a director of WeAdapt. WeAdapt is a global platform and network for climate change adaptation, and she coordinates the strategic and technical development of WeAdapt. Over to you, Sekena.
Thanks so much, Elise. And thank you, Rosie, for the previous presentation. So I think this kind of leads nicely into what I just wanted to touch on briefly today. This is a bit of a follow-on from the workshop and the webinar that we had in February, where we presented some work on a tool called the Connectivity Hub. And I'm going to just provide some quick updates to where we are with that tool, since there was quite a lot of interest in it. And this kind of connects to what Rosie was just saying, in that we all, I think, as platforms, use tagging systems and keywords to try and connect our content better on platforms and within platforms. But we also have this issue of how we connect between platforms and how we can better capitalize on our different expertise in different platforms. And so this is what I'm going to touch on a little bit today. So this is through the MAIA project, and MAIA is about maximizing the impact and accessibility of European research. It's trying to bring together the results of many European Horizon projects that work on innovation for climate change resilience and allow the widest range of audiences to access these results. So that's all great, but the challenge with this is obviously that we have so much knowledge online, and there's a lot of expertise out there, but it's very difficult for users to discover this information, to find what's credible, what's usable, and what's really relevant to their needs. And so this is where standardization comes in, and why interoperability is really important. And I think between a community like this, where there are lots of platforms doing not only things in different topic areas, but also at different levels of research and practice, from local to national and global, there's also further challenges with trying to connect this information. Next slide, please, Elise. So, as I said, the keyword tagging and the sort of standardization of this approach is key to the tool that I'm just going to quickly describe. And we did a lot of user research to try and understand what would be the benefits of this, or what were the needs of users. So we co-explored a lot of these needs around connectivity of knowledge and discoverability. Next slide, please, Elise. And what we came across was a lack of, not only a lack of language and, not only a lack of access and discoverability, but also a lack of a common language between disciplines accessing knowledge, practitioners and researchers accessing knowledge, and people working in policy. And so lots of issues also around terminology and translation. Next slide, please. So to address this, I'm not sure how many of the people on the call were on the February webinar, and so I don't want to repeat myself, but I just need to briefly provide a bit of context for those who weren't there. This is a screenshot of the tool that I'm talking about. It's called the Connectivity Hub, and what this tries to do is bring together content from many different platforms and visualize this in a graphical way so that you can see quite easily, and more easily than if you were to do a Google search, for example, or use a search engine to do this, you can quite quickly see what kind of content is connected in what ways and which organizations are actually working on what topics as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the key way that this is done is through tags, and this is an example of just a couple of platforms that do use tagging systems. But the issue with this is also that tagging systems are not standardized between platforms. So as knowledge managers and as platform owners, we all use different tagging systems. And there is often the added challenge that users also use their own tagging approaches if we allow that to happen. So there's quite a huge challenge in trying to connect this information within a platform, but then obviously also across platforms as well. Next slide, please. So the Connectivity Hub does try and connect this information through tags. So for example, here the orange tag, the orange node is a tag for flooding, and it's connecting content, which is the blue nodes. These are articles and projects on various platforms like WeAdapt, Climate Adapt, Prevention Web, and so on. So if you were to click on one of these nodes, you would be taken to a summary of that project information with the keywords associated with it, but it would also take you back to the source platform, Climate Adapt in this case. Next slide, please. And the idea is that you can also see which organizations are working on that topic. So the green nodes here are organizations working on a particular topic area, in this case DRR. And if you were to click on an orange node, you would then be provided with a definition of that key term. Next slide, please. But to address the issue of lots of different disciplines having different interpretations of the same term, or communities of research and practice using terms differently, these key terms also have alternative labels, and they also suggest, the system suggests key terms to you based on that concept. So if that concept has related terms that maybe a different discipline uses, you would be suggested those terms. And what's really important here is that if you click on a keyword, you are also provided with scope notes. And I'll come back to this later, but scope notes really help you understand how a particular community might use a term differently and apply it. And that's just important for a later point I just want to bring up. So the challenge with this was for us really that in the first phase of this tool development, so the tool I'm showing you at the moment is one that's already public, and we're about to launch another version of this in a couple of weeks' time. But the challenge with the current version is that, as I said, platforms use terms differently. How do we connect between our platforms? How do we improve cooperation and collaboration? And the other challenge is that if you do want to use common terms, or taxonomies, as they're technically referred to in terms of controlled vocabularies, there are too many out there to choose from, and there is actually not a common adaptation vocabulary as such. We do obviously have the IPCC glossaries, and UNDRR have produced a taxonomy, and there are other very nice credible taxonomies out there that are valuable, but none of these are totally connected. And some of them are very general, some of them are more specialized. So our big challenge was to try and come up with a shared language that we could use as platforms that would not impose any one type of sort of terminology on a platform, but would allow harmonization through these scope notes. So that means that the different communities can use terms differently, but we are trying to just raise awareness of how these terms are used differently. And so in the previous version that I showed you, where there were definitions for some of these terms, we did that manually. So we took a lot of these terms that were commonly used and we manually added those terms to the tool. And obviously this is also challenging and a lot of work. So the new pilot that we are hoping to release soon, in a couple of weeks, watch this space, has now incorporated an automated way of not only trying to develop a taxonomy that is a shared language that could be used across many platforms, but it's trying to bring together the best of the existing credible taxonomies that we have, for example, through UNDRR and through the IPCC, and also complement this with user-driven language and expert knowledge on the use of these terms. So the way that we have done this is, next slide, please, Alice. We can see, for example, that in WeAdapt, we have many terms that are in use that are added by users, and we allow that to some extent. But we also, this presents a problem because within platforms, and I'm sure this is a common challenge that many of us face, it becomes then very difficult to manage this knowledge in a way that it's discoverable. So what we have tried to do is start with some seed taxonomies like the IPCC glossaries and the UNDRR taxonomies, and then map existing platform information to those taxonomies to see where there is complementarity and where there are matches. And this is helpful because it provides an automated way for already connecting terms to their definitions. But then the other benefit of this, next slide, please, Alice, is we can do some automated cleaning of terms. So for example, here we have some legacy keywords, we have a plural of floods, for example, and we have many duplicates of that in, you may have misspellings and so on. And so this, for example, could be connected to the actual preferred label of flood, which has a definition from the IPCC. Next slide, please. But then the other side of the coin to this is that we also want to be able to look at taxonomies that exist out there and incorporate them into the seed taxonomies, or we want to be able to look at terms that are already in use on other platforms or on or by user-generated data. So for example, here we could have incorporated many other platforms, many of the data from other platforms as we had in the original tool. But here in the Maya project, we're also looking at all of the Cordis data in the European database of European research that's published on Cordis. So that's about 150,000 projects that are in the database, are well described. They have some key terms. And again, these key terms are different to terms that are used either on other platforms or in other taxonomies. So apart from mapping what we know is relevant and what could be applicable to existing glossaries, we're also trying to use some AI technology to mine the keywords that already exist across platforms, and in this case in the Cordis database, and then produce some candidate keywords. And then those candidate keywords can be reviewed by experts, and we can decide whether these are actually really new valuable terms that should be included in the seed glossaries, or we can reject them. Excuse me. Next slide, please, Alice. And this is valuable because then we can really make some headway in creating a taxonomy that has all of these broader and narrower concepts, has definitions, and has these scope notes. And so this is just a snapshot of a taxonomy manager that we are using to help create this taxonomy. So the ultimate aim of this, hope that wasn't too technical, but next slide, please, Alice. The real reason I wanted to show this to you today is that we now have, for example, this additional data in the new version of the tool. So we have these other projects from the Cordis database, and this means that we can quite quickly now connect data together in a more powerful way. Next slide, please, Elise. So for example, if we are again trying to look at a climate adapt project here, and we were to click on the keyword, the same thing would happen. We would come up with the project data and the summary, and we can go to the platform. Next slide, please, Elise. But the benefit here is that we are automatically able to access credible definitions of these terms, and we are able to do this in a systematic way, in a robust way. And so the key message that I just want to try and emphasize from this is that this is a small step towards making that collaboration and coordination possible across platforms, which is currently very much lacking. And we're really excited to see how we could try and capitalize on this and incorporate other platforms in the tool as well. Next slide, please, Elise. So if you're interested in the latest developments on this, we're trying to keep some sort of guidance up to date and create some explainer videos on this, but we will, as I say, in a couple of weeks' time, be launching the new version, and so we hope to share that with you shortly. And just to summarize, slide please, Elise, the key benefits are that we're trying to make this dispersed knowledge more connected and interoperable, and increase the access of this information to a wider community of users. So please collaborate with us, get in touch if you'd like to share your data. Next slide, please, Elise. We were also really interested in getting in touch with experts who are keen to help us define what this shared vocabulary should look like. And I think I'll leave it there, Elise.
Thank you, Sakina, for the great presentation. I think that takes us to the end of the full presentations. But if anyone has any questions, or it might also be useful to hear from you if you have any reflections on the full presentation, if any of those presentations or if any of the content echoes with the work that you're doing, please feel free to raise your hand or share some comments in the chat. Does anyone have anything to share or any questions, or even if any of the speakers want to react to some of the earlier presentations? But if no one, yes, I can see Petra. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I connect myself. Sorry, thanks a lot. I'm Petra. I'm working for JPI Climate. Thanks a lot for the presentation. It's very interesting. Very complex, I think, extremely complex. And the last presentation on trying to do this connectivity is certainly very interesting. We are involved in the Martica project, which is also linked to the Maya project, if you're certainly aware. And we try to get our working together here as well. It's just a question, because it's also something that I'm always wondering about, is this idea of making the platforms work together and to create synergies. You are certainly all aware of this, the mission adaptation platform. So that is, let's say, managed by the European Commission, I think, in their shared secretariat of the mission between research and climate. And what the links, to me, it's not so 100% clear. I see they have this on the EEA website and the climate adapt, but how it really works together, I don't know if you maybe it's a non-question, but it's something that I'm questioning myself.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in there, Elise.
Yeah, thanks, Sakina.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you were you had attended our earlier webinar, Petra, but we did have one in February, which was jointly with the mission implementation.
Yeah. No.
And I think, yeah, and so I think, and also this work, I should say, is also a follow-on from the K4CAP project, and a lot of initiatives over the last couple of years that have tried to bring platforms together. So I think we're all basically trying to figure out how to do this better. And a few convening people have sort of regularly tried to bring this community together over the years. And the Mission Implementation Platform was one of those also, who was co-hosting with us in February. So I think there are definitely sort of opportunities and avenues to do this, but because that was quite new at the time, we're still trying to explore how this could happen.
Yeah.
But one of those ways, I mean, the Mission Implementation Platform also has these thematic working groups around particular topics like stakeholder engagement. We're hoping to have one on platforms maybe next year, and climate services and so on. So I think, yeah, this community is basically trying to find those ways forward in terms of better collaboration.
Yeah.
Sorry, a clear answer, but
No, I think but it's very interesting to exchange on this, because now I think the mandate of the mission platform is already almost coming to an end, and I've seen that in the new work program. So the intention is to further support this kind of work, either with the same group or another group. I think it would be interesting to join forces and really to see what is possible with a sort of an intervention of the European Commission to really implement the mission that they have, because in the end, the platform is the central element, or platforms are a central element to bring us closer to the mission goal, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And because there are many platforms with many different specialties and specialisms and good connections to different actors, I guess no one platform can do it all. So it is
Probably
a question of us collaborating and figuring out where we can sort of, where the sweet spots are, I guess.
Absolutely. If I may, just the last thing, I put that in the chat in the beginning, that we are actually organizing the upcoming European Climate Change Adaptation Conference, and there will be a bigger slot on, of course, on the mission and also on the platforms. That's the call. There will be a call for sessions, and I think I would also encourage them probably to submit a call. We'll open in autumn sometime. We have 5 dedicated themes, but the platforms are a little bit across, I would say. I can share more information on that. And I think we are also part of this community, let's say, so the community of the good willing practices. Yeah.
Great. That's great to hear. Yeah, very exciting that there'll be a session at ECHA.
Yeah.
Good to know.
There's another question for you, Sakina, in the chat, so I'll read it to you. So it's Amartuya who is asking, I was wondering whether you have stakeholder meetings from industries initially or during the development of the shared glossaries and terminology.
Thank you. That's a great question. Not so far, no. So at the moment, we are in the process of doing the sort of semi-automated creation of the glossary. But this phase that we will embark on next is where we will try and engage experts from different sectors. And so this would be a really important part of that, I think.
Thanks, Sakina. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we will move on. So we're now entering the second half of our webinar, and really this is an opportunity to hear from everyone. We're going to be using our Miro board again, so if Rosie or Sakina, if you could please share the link again. It's the same link, but you'll just have to scroll down to access the next board. And really what we want to hear, or what we want to exchange on, initially using the Miro board, and we'll leave it open for a little while before we start a conversation. But we're keen to hear about the enablers, barriers, and opportunities for collaboration around policy and practice engagement, citizen engagement, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And you can take those boards one at a time. We'll focus on policy and practice engagement first. And hopefully people can now access the Miro board, and I can explain a little bit more about each board. So each board is, they're the ones with the green frame. The one we're starting to look at is called Policy Practice Engagement and Capacity Building. And within it, there's 3 boxes, one called Rose, Enablers, the other one called Thorns, Barriers, and the last one called Bud, Opportunities for Collaborations, and Key Lessons, which is also an opportunity for you to share things that you've sort of learned from this webinar, and share your own experiences more broadly. And for enablers, we've split it into 3 quadrants. One is more focused on tools and technologies, so really relating to the platform functionalities. Another one focuses on processes and practices. So, you know, consultation, survey, focus groups, and there's a box for anything else. So what makes it, what facilitates, you know, policy and practice engagement? What makes it possible? And yes, and then we have the barriers. So what are the barriers? What are the challenges around policy and practice engagement for platforms specifically? What are some of the gaps? I think Bodil alluded to that a little bit, so feel free to add to that. Bodil, feel free to fill in the post-it notes. And then the last ones is opportunities for collaboration. And what you need to do is essentially take a post-it note. You can take one that is already on there on the quadrant, or you can take a new one from the left and start typing. You can zoom in. Miro is very user-friendly, so if you zoom in, you can type in as much as you want, and it'll write quite small, but then it'll adjust the size depending on how much text you write. And if that is not working for you, or if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand or chat or post a question in the chat box. And we'll leave it open for a little while to give you some time to think about it and answer, and then we can come back as a group and give everyone an opportunity to share reflections. Okay, so I can see people have been writing quite a few post-it notes, and I can see you're still writing, but I'll just take this opportunity to jump in quickly because I can see a few people have left, and we'd just like to share a Mentimeter for you to fill in. I'll share the link, and this is just while people are here. We want to capture some reflections on what future topics you might be interested in for webinars. So Sakina just shared a link to a Mentimeter with a code, and there's also a QR code which you can scan on the screen. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see the screen with the Mentimeter, and are you able to vote? Yes, I can see people are voting. Great. Feel free to share. Another 20 seconds. You can add more than one topic. I think you can add up to 3 if you're interested in more than one. Great. I'll move on to the next question. So if anyone, I don't think anyone typed other, so we can skip this one. And then are there any specific actions or initiatives that you'd like to see this climate adaptation platform community of practice undertake? And you can just type it in, whether that might be collaborating on proposals or webinars, events, projects. Feel free to just type in a word or a short sentence. You can also let us know by email or in the chat box if that is better for you. Okay, so Malou said that she could only select one topic for the previous slide. That's fine.
Yeah, and also just to add, if you did have particular topics that you would like us to focus on that you voted on, it would be great to know more specifically what you feel you'd be interested in. For example, if you're interested in the social inclusion and engagement topic, and there's particular areas around that you're interested in, then please do also add that. The more relevant we can make this series of webinars for this community, obviously the better. And we hope to have another webinar before the end of the year, hopefully after all the COP business is over. And we are also obviously interested in the different ways we can collaborate, whether that's on writing up our lessons learned into a brief and making that available to other platforms and the wider community, or as Alice says, I mean, definitely maybe the ECHA session next year in June would be a great opportunity for us all to do something together, writing papers together or doing workshops together, and maybe collaborating across some of the European projects that we are all working on as well would be great.
And also feel free to share how you'd like this community of practice to stay in touch. Is emails the best way, or are there any other ways that we could stay connected? Okay, I think it's probably just one response per person. I think you're able to vote on the different ones. So if there's one that really stands out, you can vote for it. There's definitely appetite for some collaboration. We just have to pinpoint. Great. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to say anything as well. Thank you for that. I will close the survey and we can come back to the Miro board. And what I was thinking of doing here is I can see there's, you know, quite a few of you who've already put post-it notes on the different quadrants. Maybe we can start with the policy and practice engagement. And I wonder if anyone wants to share reflections they've put on post-it notes. Inigo, I can see that you've written quite a few things. I could see you typing away. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about your work and how you came across the webinar and some reflections on enablers and barriers.
Sure, thanks for the invitation. So my name is Inigo. I'm project manager at VC3, which are the coordinators of Maya project that Sukaina already mentioned. So I'm kind of representation from the VC3 as coordinator of this project. That as the colleagues mentioned, we are the sister, let's say, in this vocabulary you use in EU-funded projects. We are the sister project from Magica project. And I think Sukaina already explained it really good what we are doing regarding the platforms. So this is just that the connectivity hub is just a part of that afterwards, so more focused on the knowledge management. But this is supposed to in the really next 12 months, because we are in the very last year of the project. We will start to launch different platforms, networks that goes from knowledge, as Sukaina mentioned, to something that is going to be more similar to services. So somehow we have an impact on a larger audience, probably more focused on policy and academia through these knowledge management solutions. But then we have some partners working on how to become this into a service. Let's say service, let's say tool that may be useful for local authorities mostly, or any company that is looking for any climate adaptation or mitigation solution. But for sure, rounded on the results from the different EU-funded projects that we have been participating. So the previous ones, because as you probably know from previous workshop, this is my really first workshop in this Agora ecosystem. We have this. Maya project comes from the collaboration of previous projects. So it's Brigade, it's Connecting Natura. There are three different projects, but working on the same point. And I don't know if you have any specific question or regarding what I. So indeed, my experience in EU-funded projects is quite large, but more focused on food systems. This is even if I'm an environmental scientist, this comes from the. This is my really first time working on climate, so I am still getting used with this new vocabulary.
Thank you. That's great. That's great. Is there anyone else from the audience who want to introduce their platform and maybe say a little bit more about the work that they do? I'm scrolling through the chat and I can see there's Kim and Malu, and apologies if I'm not pronouncing it right, from Climate Adaptation, representing Climate Adaptation Services. I wonder if you want to say a few words, either Kim or Malu.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. You pronounce our names very well. So maybe what we put on the screen is something on Miro, the quadrant actually, that maybe deserves some explanation also. We are actually building our own little universe of platforms, more or less, right? In the center, you see that we are operating the national adaptation platform for the Netherlands, but that is well connected with the National Climate Impact Atlas. So the two are strongly connected. At the same time, for a province, we've also got a platform, a portal as we call it in the Netherlands, and that's also compatible with the national one. And currently that's in the making, so I don't have a website link for it yet. We're also working on the impact atlases / portals, which actually are for the islands in the Caribbean that are part of the Dutch kingdom. So in a way, they're also internationally. So that's what we try to visualize with our purple Post-its there. And then what I filled out on the policy thing, because I just came out of a meeting with the ministry, is what for us is very pivotal for the policy, from the policy perspective. So an enabler, I would say, is that you have fruitful and sustainable relationship with, in our case, the ministry. For instance, we just had a meeting with somebody who's been with us at the ministry for more than 10 years. So on the one hand, you need to be lucky with that, because it's not up to us who decides who's put on the job at the ministry, but at the same time, we do put a lot of effort in keeping the relationship pleasant and fruitful. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Maluj, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, Sakina, go ahead.
Maybe can I just put Kim on the spot a little bit? Sorry, Kim, since you have the mic. Maybe you would like to say something about the previous K4CAP initiative and maybe some of the key learning and what future steps you'd like to see this community take.
Well, you do put me on the spot there indeed, because the K4CAP net project actually stems from an initiative that was taken a while ago in 2015 by Roger Street and myself, and then many others quickly connected. For instance, the SEI people and Sukaina, but also the Mare people. And a couple of years ago, before COVID, we actually got a bit of funding from the European Commission, and that project ended. We are currently, and that's also why we're happy to be on this call, actually, investigating what could be ways forward. I mean, it's not about money, but in the end, you need money. So we now do it. It's actually Roger Street and Malou and myself who keep, let's say, the network alive, but eventually it would, of course, be interesting is if we can have some funding, because everybody agrees, also the people here, that it's good to learn from each other. That was the logic behind K4CAP. Everybody has to adapt to climate change. Everybody's got a national adaptation plan or strategy. Everybody needs a platform, but there was no vehicle to actually learn from each other. So then you would have to reinvent the wheel each time. And what I also put in the Mentimeter is that occasions like ECA or maybe even adaptation futures, although the next one is quite far off in New Zealand, are, I think, excellent occasions to see if you can do a bit more other than have a session and do some presentations, but also maybe have some back-to-back meetings or see if you can get together. So that's what we are currently also. And the other interesting thing with K4CAP is that and that happened at Adaptation Futures 2018 in South Africa, that we realized that at the other side of the world, in Japan, the Nice people, who Malou and I will be visiting in 3 weeks, by the way, had a similar initiative of establishing a network in Asia Pacific of those who are operating climate adaptation platforms. And I think the two, K4CAP with or including the AP Plat, as they call it, Asia Pacific platforms, could also be something that holds maybe some future for our networking. So no clear answers, but we are definitely together with people like projects such as these willing to investigate what could be next. Thank you, Sukaina.
Thanks so much, Kim. And yeah, thank you for giving the introduction to that, because Roger's just joined. I was just about to say that this work is obviously leading very much on from the work that Roger and yourself have been doing for many years. So welcome, Roger. We were just talking about the history behind the setting up of this community of practice.
Sorry, my transport was a little slow in getting back here. I apologize.
No problem. We were just grilling Kim a little bit about the previous K for CAP and other efforts to try and keep this community of practice going, and what we see as next directions. I'll give you a bit of time to settle in, and maybe you want to share some reflections about where this community could go, Roger. But I'll let Bodil submit her question.
I'll wait a bit, and then it looks like other people have their hand up.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all nice presentations and input. This is my first time in the network, so perhaps this is what I say now, it's perhaps what you have already done. But as I also could say in the presentation, we have now new possibilities for our platform, the national platform, that we have tasked by the governance, by the Swedish governance, but we can now do much more things than we used to do. So one thing that might be useful for me and my colleagues would be to have a more in-depth experience of other countries' national platforms. I mean, having about the same task as we have, but to learn from other countries. That would be a more perhaps target group focused session. That I think that could give us quite a lot of inspiration and ideas for our new CMS possibilities.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
This is I was just going to say, Sakina, I forget who, I didn't know who was talking there, but I apologize. But that was the whole idea of KE4CAP. And I don't know what Sakina has already said or others have said, but that was the whole idea of that, was to pull people together, to share some of the challenges, some of the lessons they've learned, some of the innovations that they were thinking of doing amongst the community of other platforms, so that they could learn and continue to improve those platforms. I think that was the real idea of that. And we're very happy that the Commission saw the advantage of that and did fund us for a couple of years, but we're no longer funded. And we're trying to find other opportunities to keep this community going. And I'm very pleased that Sakina has pulled this group together, because we've been doing this for a number of years, but all in kind. In other words, with no funding. And that is doable only for a bit of a time, and it's not doable now. If you want to see some of the things, I don't know, Sakina, did you share the link to the report that came out of KE4CAP?
I haven't, but I'll do that now in the chat.
I think you will find that quite interesting, and like I said, we keep looking for opportunities. We not only had people from Europe, but we also drew in a number of people from around the world, which was very interesting, because there are other platforms in different parts of the world that are doing what you're probably trying to do and learning how to do that. And I know we've got Japan, we've had a relationship with Japan, and they are very interested in trying to pull together the Asia Pacific community and to share some ideas, to look at where they're going. And there's a meeting coming up in Japan in October, the latter part of October. I'm not able to go, but a colleague of mine is going at their invitation. And like I said, we try to share as much of that information as we can. But your point is exactly what this was all about. And we feel it would be very useful to continue this dialogue. And I mean, we even saw in the discussions that were going on, they were very targeted to different aspects that were identified by the platforms. And we even saw, for example, Indonesia was doing something and someone in the United States was doing something similar. And they got together and learned and tried to learn and see what others were doing. So I think that that is really important, that what you get at. Sorry, I butted in there, Sakina, without
Yeah,
knowing.
no problem. No, that's helpful. Kim was just on as well, explaining about the looking for funding and for the necessity to keep this community going. So that's great.
Yeah, Kim and I have been doing this for a number of years, and we've had the advantage of having people like Sakina and others coming in as well to help us.
Thanks, Roger. Bodil, did you have another question?
Perhaps not a question, but of course I understand that's the purpose of this network. But perhaps you could be even more target oriented for a special session, or
Yeah.
for example, I'm still very curious about the two platforms that we could hear about. It should be more. I would like to spend more time with Rosie and Christoph, for example, to have more time to go more in depth.
Yeah.
So that's perhaps what we did. Then you cannot see everything, but if someone can try to find out which platforms are the most alike or have the similar purpose on a national level, and to put them together. I don't know how to do that, but that's what I was.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
we saw the advantage of that happening within KE4CAP and tried to enable that. And again, it's getting people together that want to have dialogues amongst themselves as well as with the broader audience. And it was often the broader audience discussions that identified people that had similarities in their various aspects and wanted to get together. So your point is very much taken, and we'd love to be able to facilitate that. That's the important thing to do, is to facilitate those types of things.
Sorry, Alice, go ahead.
I wonder if any of you have reflections on what format works best for those kind of dialogues and conversation. Is it webinar, or is it, you know, having a shared live document, or is it being available via email? I mean, I wonder if there's any kind of innovative or creative ways, that creative sort of formats you've used, or if webinar is indeed the best format.
I can say that webinars were really good for introducing and getting people talking, but it was, as was said just with the previous speaker, those bilaterals or trilaterals or whatever you want to call it, where they can sit down and talk about it. What we are also hoping to do is that at ECHA, which is in Italy in 2025, we will hold a session again that brings people together and starts the dialogues. It's the dialogues that are really important, and I think those are really advantageous. I know when we were dealing with someone that was trying to start out, we ran sessions with one-to-one with them, trying to, you know, work out, and they were dialogues more than sessions. I don't know, you know, so there isn't a one size fits all as far as I'm concerned. The webinars were useful to get a dialogue started, because some people were a little reluctant or weren't aware of what similar national platforms were, or what the people that were having similar problems. So anyways.
Yeah, Petra was just on Roger saying that they're hoping to have a session at ECHA on platforms. So we were suggesting one way for us to collaborate going forward is to do that jointly, perhaps. And
Yes.
Kim was also suggesting maybe having a session before or after together, a workshop day or something, for us to have these more in-depth conversations.
It's really, I agree, and I'm pleased that there will be a session there. just for those that are interested, there'll also be a session probably at Adaptation Futures in New Zealand, but that's going to focus primarily on what's going on in the Asia Pacific area. But it just gets the dialogue started, people talking and working together. And that was the whole idea.
Thanks, Roger. Kim, you have your hand up?
Yeah, if I may add, the original idea actually that Roger and I also had 10 years ago is that there should actually be at each and every one of the ECAs and the adaptation futures a bit of some sort of standing session on platforms anyway. So far, actually, we've succeeded in doing that. So I really support the idea of doing something jointly, at least for Italy, and who knows, for New Zealand. And the other thing, listening to what Roger just said about the webinars, what we also did, we experimented a little bit, and I thought it worked very well, is for the webinars, we actually asked some of the presenters to pre-record their presentations. And that means that they were sent in advance to the participants, and they really appreciate it because they could choose, for instance, to skip presentations that they might have heard earlier, for instance, and focus on others. And then the webinars more or less immediately started off with the interaction, because that's usually the difficulty. Also, what we saw here today, you usually start with presentations and one that works very well, but it also takes some time before you really get to the interactive part. So that's something that I think, enjoyed and people appreciated also. So maybe you can be innovative in that sense. Thank you.
It's definitely very, very good to know for future sessions. Does anyone have any sort of burning ideas for upcoming webinars? I think a few of you shared via the Mentimeter, but if there's any ideas that you think would be really good or of interest to the community, do let us know.
And picking up on what was said earlier, one of those ideas could be towards, if we get some information coming in and we notice that there's 2 or 3 or 4 that have similar ideas, is we could use that as a way of getting those 2 or 3 or 4 people together to do something, to explore it together, and then to share afterwards in the webinar the results of their discussions. And I'm always a big believer that your problems, a particular platform that has a challenge or some really innovative ways that they've done something, not everyone knows that they'd be interested in that, but once they hear, they get really interested. So that's why we could have a small working group being, as was said earlier, platforms that are at a national level that have similar, there's no similar, I can tell you that right now, but that are close to similar, may have issues that they want to discuss. And we did a webinar earlier in this year, and I was surprised. We asked people what they'd be interested in talking about. And I can tell you right now that there was about 3 or 4 topics that were similar. And what we could do is facilitate those groups, dialogues between those groups, facilitate meaning help them, and they bring the results back to the larger community of their discussions and what they've talked about. We're always interested in innovative ways of bringing people together, because it's only when they're brought together and have an opportunity to discuss these things in more details on an informal basis rather than a formal basis through presentations, etc., that they can really advance some of their thinking on this.
Thanks, Roger. I think that's a good idea. So for that to happen, we'd probably want to circulate a kind of survey first to understand what topics people are interested in. And then from that, we can create working groups.
I don't like to use that. Maybe a task force is a better idea than a working group. It's just that it allows them Even if they just get together and say, yeah, that's really interesting, but that's not my problem. It's still an interesting discussion. Or, I've got that similar problem. How can we solve this together? And then spending some time talking about that and how they could get it. And maybe the time doesn't mean during a particular 1 hour session. It could be over 2 or 3 weeks. Just having those discussions and coming up with a potential solution or better identification of the challenge that they want to share with it and bring other people in on. It could be just any of those things.
So we shared a Mentimeter just earlier before you arrived, Roger, where we asked, people what sort of topics they'd be interested in. And we had policy engagement, practice engagement, citizen engagement, mail, and I think tools and technology, I think those were the different sections. Are there any topics any other topics that we should be including?
Yeah, those are really interesting, and but getting down a little deeper. For example, one of the things that I became quite interested in was you talk about engaging policy, but how are people doing that? And I look at the different ways that people are doing that. How do you retain policy interest? There's different ways you could address that question. And I look at, for example, I'm not picking on just because I know Kim's on there, is look at how CAS interacts with policymakers compared to how maybe I think Finland was doing it. Not that it was better, not that it was worse, it was just different. And just how are they doing that? Why are you doing it that way? In Sweden, why are you doing it that way? And there's reasons for that, and understanding. What people are doing is as much is interesting as why they're doing it that way, I found, because it gives you a little bit of insight. Well, I don't need to be able to do that, but I need to do this. And I could, and you adapt what other people are doing. Anyways.
Okay, to be even more specific, I would like to know more about other platforms' online trainings. Christoph, you talked about online trainings. That could be a very specific session or dialogue. Knowing more about that. How have you designed and implemented online trainings? That's very specific, but that could be one way.
That'd be quite interesting. And how successful has it been? What lessons have you learned after the first one you did and the second one, and etc.?
Yes.
Yeah, we have years of data on the training that we done through Climate Ireland, and we're very close to putting a paper out on what we learned from that. It's almost ready for submission, so hopefully this will inform future training. And the reason why we wanted to bring this paper out was because the Irish government have mandated that the local authorities and public sector seek out climate training. So we put this paper out to try and inform that training, and the EPA are creating their own training courses now as well that they're going to run through the new version of Climate Ireland. But there's still gaps for some public sector bodies, and there's still gaps in where private sector get their training. So what we're doing in UCC is we're trying to fill those gaps and create an array of courses, like a climate training course, a suite of courses, or you might put it, where you have quick, snappy basics or fundamentals of climate change to get people engaged. We're running that with local authorities. So Clare County Council, we're going to run that next year. This is just quick, snappy half-day course. We have hybrid options then. So you were talking about webinars, but we also have a hybrid option. So if they want in person as well, we can do that. And then we have full day courses then, which would be on climate adaptation, where we take them a little bit deeper. So once we've kind of giving them the taste for climate training. We bring them on to the climate adaptation full day course, and then we're also developing digital badges. So, these are courses that are accredited by UCC, and then we're moving on to micro credentials from there. So you have this whole, I suppose, journey where you can work with local authorities and give them that kind of taste. And then if they want to keep training their staff, keep them engaged. And then we found that this actually also gets local authorities, the staff that are on the courses, involved in their projects. So Cork, for example, Cork County Council, Wexford County Council, a lot of Dublin, Mayo, a lot of those, and Clare as well, they'll start coming in as partners on a lot of our projects then, because they find that they can actually, they know the stuff, they've got the training from us, and then they realize, well, we need local assessments done, can we work with you on a project? So we get them involved then in this kind of co-production of our projects and our proposals.
Christopher, when do you think that paper is going to be coming out?
Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. I'm hoping to submit it at the end of the month. So,
okay, well that'll be interesting, because what we could do is use that as a trigger for online discussion for those particular interested in this, and that's the type of thing that I find useful. Is that I happen to be aware of what you're doing in Ireland because I'm a member of the Climate Adaptation Committee in Ireland.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of it, but I don't think, I don't know how many other people here were aware of what that you were putting out that paper.
Yeah, it's something we're kind of putting it through Magica. So from UCC's perspective, and this is kind of under climate, it's kind of climate science and policy, and integrating that science into policy. And we're using this paper, the insights from this paper, to develop our new courses. So those insights are already being integrated into our new courses. And then some of us are also working on ECMWF training. So we're trying to run that in tandem as well. And we're hoping to get papers out of that as well that will further advance training. So yeah, there's a lot of that coming. Just fingers sit tight, we'll get it to you soon.
Odile, is that the type of thing you were interested in?
Well,
I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I finally have enough space that has your name on it.
No, Bodil, that's me. I'm from Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, to be able to put more questions to Christopher, my questions from where we are, to have time to do that. A short presentation and then a dialogue, exactly as you say. And that could be online trainings for local people, as focused like that. Could it be? It could be that. But just an example of what kind of experience, let's say, exchange, sharing, experience exchange that could be useful for us.
Yep.
If you and I think it should be quite specific. I don't know really how to do it, but that was just came to me from these discussions. And also Rosie, how more time with you?
Yes.
Yes, that would be great. It's definitely interesting to hear some of these discussions. So yeah, and I think one of the things we're looking through or for at the Agora project is we are doing some online trainings through 2 online digital academies, which are kind of up and running now. So definitely happy to discuss those or share those in more detail. Paola, did you want to jump in on that? Because I know you're involved in those.
Yes, I would like to add something, because I was not sure that the academies that we are developing is really a training, but the academia that we will have in Agora will be mainly 2. There will be different modules. One will be related on the disinformation, and one will be related on the use of climate data, and also there will be inventories, and the training will be on the correct use of climate data for adaptation goals. They will be available in next month. But I don't know if this is what exactly what you are discussing, because I'm also thinking that the CMCC, I don't know, perhaps Robert you already knows, develops school, the FESR school for some specific goals. I don't know if you are interested in one kind of training or a remote training or in-person training, but yes, there are different activities ongoing, not only in the Agora project, but also at CMCC on this.
Great. So lots of food for thought. We're nearly on the hour. I wonder if there's any sort of final concluding thoughts or actions to go forward that we want to take. I mean, certainly we can start creating different task forces or areas for further discussion. It would be interesting to know if, because we have a list of people who are, potentially interested, but that could potentially be extended. I'm sure each of you have more contacts who could be interested. I wonder how we can make that available as widely as possible.
Yeah, and just while people are thinking, thanks, Alice, I can say that just a reminder that we'll be trying to have one more of these, at least one more webinar before the end of the year, hopefully after COP. And then I think these ideas of having some more focused workshops and in-person opportunities to do things together is definitely something we should think about. Maybe we can try and facilitate that through the many projects that are actually connected to this same sort of activity. And also we'll keep an eye out on the ECHA plans for submissions for sessions and make sure we can coordinate that as well. Kim, did you want to add something?
No, it was actually just the ECHA thing. I was curious who takes the lead in that, because it will be open next month, I think, already. I think it would be good if that will be a coordinated effort. So if I understand correctly, you are willing to take the initiative for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would hopefully do it in collaboration with yourself and Roger.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we definitely shouldn't miss that opportunity. So somehow we will do something.
It may also clear for the others then. I mean, that apparently Roger, yourself, and me, we volunteer now because we've also done that in the past. But the idea is to involve or invite or collaborate with each and every one of us, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So whoever wants to play an active role in that, but you need a small group of people who actually get the session proposal through, and then we
yeah.
Let's see, maybe the people in here maybe should be on the front row of those who we ask to review the text or whatever. I think that would be good.
Yeah, great idea.
Okay, thanks. Good.
Any other last final comments? If not, then I think we can say thank you so much to all of you for participating, and thank you so much to our speakers as well. Chris and Bodil and Rosie, obviously. And we look forward to being in touch with you soon. We'll definitely put together some kind of mailing list or some sort of way to keep in communication with this growing group of people, because yeah, it's definitely expanding fast. So, all right, thanks so much. Alice, anything else from you? All right, thank you very much, everyone.